La volevo proprio fare in italiano questa conferenza, ma ho avuto un tipo di traumatismo con le conferenze in italiano e vi devo spiegare questo traumatismo. Si dice così, traumatismo? Trauma, ecco. E questo trauma era a Genova, che avevo una conferenza da fare sul biomimetismo, che è l'ispirazione della natura per l'ingegneria e l'innovazione, che è possibile ispirarci dalla natura per innovare, per l'ingegneria, e avevo un animale, specialmente dovevo parlare delle cozze di mare, perché hanno un tipo di setta che è molto particolare e che si studia anche in medicina, ma non mi ricordavo come si diceva cozze di mare, quindi ho detto cazzo. Se vi succede è proprio la dovete lavorare, la vostra poker face. Ok, grazie per tutto questo, ma ovviamente seguo in inglese e mi scusi, proprio vi chiedo scusa per questo, ma lo faccio in inglese, sì, e spero che tutto sarà a posto. So anyway, let's get started. As you know, the whole point of this conference is that science without conscience is terrible. And whenever you produce a lot of science and not enough conscience, you're going to put your civilization in trouble. And I'm not talking about just yourself. You will put your entire country, your entire culture, and your entire civilization in trouble if you produce too much science and not enough wisdom. But let's try to get a general perspective on all that. I mean, every generation has some kind of responsibility. Every generation wants purpose. So you're the new generation, and you may want to know why you're born, and what could be your mission, or what could be your next achievements, what your life will be about. And you have to know that we live in a period that's very comparable to the Renaissance, il Rinascimento. Our time is extremely comparable to this one, really. You know, Rinascimento is a word that was invented. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, they never used it. Never. Rinascimento was invented by Giorgio Vasari some 100 years later, actually 100 years later. He invented it because if you were Michelangelo, if you were Da Vinci, it didn't look like the Renaissance at all. I mean, you could see more war, more religious intolerance, more disease. The world was ugly at the time, really. It's when we zoom out that it was beautiful. But if you were living at the time in a street of Florence, you could see a lot of beautiful things for sure. But as you know, Da Vinci was persecuted, and his day-to-day life was not really happy at all. But still, I mean, if we zoom out, the period was amazing. Our time is the same. Look, for example, just recently, physicists found our new address in the universe. So this is a map of where we are in the universe. Now it's called Laniakea. Laniakea means large heaven, immense paradise in Hawaiian. And this Laniakea is our address in the universe. Every point here, one point is a galaxy. Each single point is an entire galaxy. Now, how many galaxies you think there are in the universe? How many you think? Like, who thinks it's more than 1 billion? Come on, raise your hand. 1 billion? 1 billion galaxies? More? More? All right. 10 billions? Still more? 100 billions? Yeah, it's actually 2,000 billions. 2,000 billion galaxies in the universe. At least, we're talking about the lowest number. 2,000 billion galaxies. And our galaxy is there in that very point. And this is just 100,000 galaxies here, so it's a very small part of the universe. But still we have this new map. I mean, what a time to be alive when you think about it. And if you want to know where we are, well, this is what it looks like. So, in the point I showed you, if we zoom, those are different galaxies, small, large. Our galaxy, of course, is the Milky Way. That's why it's called a galaxy, right? It comes from the Greek galactos, which means milk, because it somehow looks like milk in the sky. So our galaxy is the Milky Way, and if you zoom in it, it looks like this. And then you've got so many different stars, and our star, as you know, is the sun. And this is how small we are, right? We're that small, but still, our knowledge of the universe has completely exploded. I mean, we used to believe there was only 2 or 3 galaxies in the universe at the beginning of the 20th century. Now it's 2,000 billion. And still, we're thinking about that. Well, you might have seen this image. You can find it on the Twitter account of Elon Musk. Now, you know, Elon Musk is so followed on Twitter. And, well, this is the main picture he has on his account. But what is it? Exactly. This is the terraforming of Mars. The idea that you could turn planet Mars from a red planet to a blue planet. And this is called terraforming. Now, you know, in the 20th century, we developed technologies to go from blue to red. Let me explain. In the 20th century, if we had a blue planet like that, we could turn it into this one. And we have the technology to do that. I mean, with the atomic bomb and everything, weapons of mass destruction, we can turn a blue planet into a red one if we want. This is the technology we have developed. Now, if you want to have one explanation that we produce a lot of science, but not a lot of wisdom, well, just consider that we have the technology to go from blue to red, but we don't have the technology to go from red to blue. And that's all there is to know about the 20th century. In the 20th century, we developed weapons that could kill a planet off, but we never developed weapons or technologies that could turn a dead planet into a living one. Well, maybe your generation is going to do that. I mean, if it happens, it's going to be you or your children or your grandchildren, but I don't think it's going to take any longer. So this is the kind of purpose you guys could have. You know, we screwed up in the 20th century. We screwed up, we messed up. And we could turn this around. So that's the kind of purpose I would like to give you in that talk. Because yes, I mean, this is what we made. Now, this huge ass bomb there is the Tsar Bomba. That's the largest nuclear bomb ever detonated on Earth. And this is what the cloud looks like. So, the small red cloud here, they're Hiroshima and Nagasaki, okay? And this is the altitude of a commercial flight. And this is the first French nuclear test for a hydrogen bomb. And this super large cloud there that could actually reach satellite altitude, this is the Tsar Bomba, and this is the largest bomb ever detonated on Earth. And just to give you perspective, I grew up in Paris, and if this bomb fell on Paris, the yellow circle you're seeing would be total destruction, but like, when I mean total, I mean parking destruction. Like, you turn the place into a parking. And the red circle would be total destruction in terms of human lives. Nobody in that circle would survive. Now, we have this technology. Okay, that's great. We have it, but again, if we have weapons of mass destruction, couldn't we have weapons of mass construction? Why didn't we ever think about developing them? You know, weapons of mass construction. Again, you guys could think about that. Well, when it comes to crazy science, and I'm really talking about messed up science. Well, the Nazis, of course, were like really, really creative, because when you want to kill people, most of the time you're going to get really creative. So this project was like a real idea of the Third Reich. So the Nazis really had this project. Of course, they never had the technology to achieve it. They never had the time and money to achieve it, but they discussed it. They brought scientists discussing, okay, how about we send a mirror into space so we could burn New York as if it was an anthill. Anthill? How do you say that in Italian? Yeah, right?
che possa focalizzare. Let me give just 2 minutes to
Please.
translate that. Allora, dunque, la scienza perversa è quella dei nazisti che non avevano i mezzi economici, ma avevano l'idea, perché quando diventi perverso e devi ammazzare su scala, diciamo, notevole, devi necessariamente diventare creativo, ci ha appena detto il dottor Aberkan. Pertanto avevano riunito un team di scienziati ai quali avevano chiesto: potrebbe essere possibile posizionare da qualche parte un gigantesco specchio che crei un cono di luce capace di bruciare al suolo, radere al suolo New York like an anthill, come un formicaio. Thank you.
Grazie. So, I mean, okay, the guys thought about it. They gathered and they were like, okay, how about we do that, right? That would be a great idea. We send a mirror to space and we burn people with it. Well, this is what you can do with science, right? If you have no wisdom, if you have no conscience, if you don't really care, this is what you can do. And again, needless to say, this is quite bad. So anyway, today we have this. This is a real missile, and it can go 20 times the speed of sound, 20 times. This is a nuclear missile. We have the technology to do that. Now we can send missiles that go 20 times the speed of sound and carry nuclear weapons. Again, what a time to be alive. Why don't we do something else as well with the same technology? But again, I mean, making weapons is not necessarily stupid, in the sense that you usually need to be quite intelligent to make good weapons. And in history, the best weapons were made by the best minds. This, for example, is a sketch by Da Vinci, right? And Da Vinci, you know, when he had to convince anybody that he should be paid, he said, I'm a weapons engineer. So Da Vinci went to Milan and he said, look, he spoke to Lodovico Sforza and he told him, I can make great weapons. And he did. I mean, he never made these ones, but he spent a lot of time designing them. Because again, war, destruction, usually takes the best minds. It usually calls for the smartest people. And this is what's really ridiculous about it, is that we focus the smartest minds on how to kill each other. Again, couldn't we find a way to focus the smartest minds on something else? But imagine you're, again, in the Rinascimento. So you know those two people, they are Da Vinci and Michelangelo, they hated each other. I don't know if you knew that, but Da Vinci and Michelangelo, they really hated each other. They couldn't speak to each other, they could barely work with each other, and they were total opposite. But who cares? I mean, in the end, they made those masterpieces like the Pietà. Just a small story about this sculpture. It was made by Michelangelo, as you know, but one day Michelangelo was in the church and he heard somebody say, oh, this is such a beautiful sculpture made by someone else. And he got really upset about that the guy didn't know it was his sculpture. So at night, he stayed in the church so that he could just, engrave this text saying, Michelangelo made it, right? Because that's how screwed up he was. He was actually autistic, and he could focus so much on anything he was working on. I mean, we're talking about not taking a shower for like 1 month. So Michelangelo could stay with his boots in bed without showering for 1 month. He was that focused. But the Renaissance was also about mathematics. So Fra Pacioli, you might not have heard of him, but he was an accountant. So his work was accounting. And he was actually the math professor of Leonardo da Vinci. If you will, he was the mathematics teacher of Leonardo da Vinci. Of course, da Vinci didn't go to school. At the time, it was called the bottega, right? And he was in the bottega in Florence, but still, the guy who taught him mathematics was this guy. And for him, all of mathematics was about proportions. So you have in his book this beautiful letter, showing how to make beautiful letters by following the right proportions. Now, this was in the 15th century, but we're still using it today. I mean, seriously, we're doing exactly the same thing in logo design today. So this is how modern the guy was. And, well, that's why I'm telling you we are in the Renaissance as well right now. You could call it Renaissance 2.0, if you will. So, by the way, you're getting everything I'm saying, right? Mostly? Okay. So, back to the exploration. This is the Kepler Telescope. Now, the Kepler Telescope is like a brilliant piece of engineering that was sent to space to find exoplanets, meaning planets that would look like planet Earth. And we sent this satellite, and it was exploring not this one. So this is the area studied by the telescope, okay? Well, this one is not the Kepler Telescope. The Kepler Telescope is this one. So again, I'm zooming out. In one galaxy out of 2,000 billion, we explored only this, and this is what we found. All this. Now, by just exploring this small triangle, we found so many exoplanets, and in fact, I'm not even showing you all of them. These are all the exoplanets, not all actually, just the best, if you will, the best exoplanets found by the Kepler Telescope in about 12 years. And most of them could be habitable. Most of them could be used to land and settle human beings. They're just far away, okay. But they're not that far away when you think about the distances in the galaxy. They're far away for our technology, but they're not far away. I mean, they're very, very close. And again, this is what they look like. I mean, ain't that amazing? We would never have thought that there were so many planets like that this close to our place. And you know, one guy was actually burnt because he said there were so many planets like ours. His name was Giordano Bruno. And you can see his statue on Campo dei Fiori in Rome, because he was burned there, because he said, I believe there are other planets in the universe that look like ours. But the guy was right, he just didn't have the technology to study them, but he was right. So I let you contemplate that, because this, okay, the past generations, the generations of your parents and grandparents and all that, and we messed up a bit, right? 2 world wars, the Cold War, we have to admit that we messed up. But we're leaving you that as well. This is part of the legacy of the past generation there. And this is a present that's given to you if you want to study it one day. And even if you don't study it, even if you go in any other field, well, you will still live in a world that knows that so many other planets exist next to yours. And that I find inspiring. So, exactly, the Kepler Telescope found 2,000 and more than 600 new planets in this very small triangle I showed you. Meaning that now you can be absolutely sure there are other forms of life in space. Any astronomer, any astrophysicist will tell you that given the size, given the dimensions of our galaxy and the universe, it's almost impossible that we are alone. It's just that we have no idea what other life would look like. You know, we want it to have 2 hands and 2 arms and 2 legs. But why? It could be just something else altogether. We don't know. Now, going back to destruction, this tree is very special. In Japanese, it is called Hibakujumoku. Now, Hibakujumoku means the surviving tree. And it is the surviving tree because it received an atomic bomb and it survived. So this tree was burned and destroyed by an atom bomb in Hiroshima, and it's still alive today, actually. Now, I'm taking a picture here, of course, in the winter, so it doesn't look so alive, but it's still alive. That's a great symbol of hope, actually. However we mess up, there might still be some kind of follow-up for us. So these are the beautiful projects that I find inspiring, and I think focus human intelligence and science on beauty. This is called the Treetop Raft. How do you say raft, please, in Italian?
Allora, rafting sappiamo cos'è, praticamente il raft è lo strumento sostanzialmente. Il raft in cima all'albero, ok? Avete sentito?
Ok.
Devo ripetere? Ok?
Grazie mille. Okay, the point is to study the top of the trees, to study the frogs and the snakes and the birds, because on the top of the trees in the Amazonian rainforest, you have a lot of interesting animals. And so people are camping there. And this is still something you could do in your life. You know, before you die, this kind of stuff is something you can do. I mean, why not? And this is focusing intelligence on beauty. And I find it quite wise. So, I told you about bombs and everything. I told you about weapons of mass destruction. So you could call those bombs, the Tsar Bomba I showed you, this stuff, well, you could call it the super boom, right? The super boom, because it is the largest detonation ever occurring on planet Earth, I mean human-made. But now that I've told you about super booms, let me tell you about another stuff that's called a super bloom.
Devo tradurre.
Yeah, please, okay.
Allora, to bloom, when a flower blooms, un fiore sboccia. Quindi così come ci sono stati momenti nella storia dell'essere umano di super boom, ok? Riferendosi chiaramente ad atomic bombs, eccetera, eccetera. Ora dice, passiamo invece a ciò che la natura mostra in termini di super bloom, quindi le meravigliose fioriture, località del pianeta che hanno un eccesso di fioritura. Thanks.
Merci beaucoup. So, okay, once every 10 years, you're going to see the desert in Death Valley, California, and it's going to bloom.
Wow.
Like massively bloom. And it's going to become all orange like that, or blue or yellow. And again, it's a desert, so it's called Death Valley, right? It's not supposed to be a nice place. But still, once every 10 years, it's going to become like that. You see a satellite picture. You can see it from the sky. Now, why can't we do that? Why can't we have a technology that does that? Wouldn't that be cool? If our generation, your generation, in fact, could develop weapons that could create that? It looks impossible, right? I mean, how could you do that? Well, actually, you can. I mean, let me tell you about another story. This gentleman here is a Japanese guy, and his wife was in depression. And she was in deep, profound depression. His wife wanted to kill herself. And she was blind. She couldn't see. For 2 years, this man planted a massive garden around their house. It took him 2 years alone to plant so many flowers so that even though she was blind, she could smell them and she could enjoy life again. And it worked. And this is what one person can do. Without any technology, in that case, he was just doing it by hand. So what would happen if we had technology to do it like massively? Because this is some kind of construction here. But what if it was now massive construction? Well, we have it. They're called seed bombs. They're bombs planting trees. I mean, isn't that cool? You just have a bomb that you drop from a plane or from a drone, and wherever it's dropping, it's going to plant a tree. And it's for real. It exists today. So this is what they look like. They're called seed bombs. And you just throw them, and you're going to replant stuff. And you could do that if you want like an internship for this summer or whatever, you want to travel and you want to do something cool for one summer. You could do that. You could just apply and say, I would like to seed bomb stuff. Why not? This is India, where they're making so many seed bombs, and you can see that this is in the 21st century, but it's handmade, right? It's small. So when it comes to destruction, we have super high technologies. When it comes to construction, sometimes, of course, we have high construction technologies as well, but when it comes to this, we're still doing it by hand, as if it was 400 years ago. We could do better than that. So there's this company, their name is Drone Seed, if you want to check them out. And Drone Seed, well, as the name indicates, they make drones that plant seeds. And this kind of drone can replant about 2 football fields per day. So 2 football fields replanted per drone. That's pretty neat. And the drone is not that expensive. I mean, it's way less expensive than a missile or a tank or a plane. And this technology already exists today. Maybe one of you is going to be working on that one day, or something better.
Hopefully.
So, this was the first part of my conference here. First, telling you about the universe. And the second part is going to be about you, about knowing yourself. Because, okay, we have this drone here. And again, I mean, it's really good looking. It's a cool drone, but we have other drones as well, as you know. And, well, this is what we do with drones as well. So, drones started during World War II. The Nazis actually had a rather large drone called Goliath, and the Goliath was just a mobile bomb that they could remote control. So they were just using a wire and a remote control, and they would send a bomb to explode under Russian tanks. And it worked. So drones, again, we invented first to kill each other, not to construct things. Actually, the first time in history that a drone like that has killed someone alone. Let me really focus on that. When you had this, you were not killing anybody alone because you've got somebody remote controlling. So it's a human being who's deciding to kill someone, okay? But in 2021, we had this type of drone killing someone themselves. There was nobody behind it. The drone just said, look, looks like a bad guy, I'm going to kill it. Autonomously. Nobody directing it at all. Now, unfortunately, this is what we're giving your generation as well. But your generation, if you become lawyers or journalists or even bloggers just, well, you could write about that. You could criticize that. You could give your opinion on that. And I don't even ask you to be on my side. You could say these things are good. You could argue about it. My point is, your generation will be the one commenting about it and innovating in terms of law and politics and diplomacy or anything. So this is what we have as well. The Boston Dynamics, looks like a dog, but it's got this big ass cannon on top of it. And obviously this is not made to plant flowers, right? And this is the French army using it. So, I mean, this is a thing, it already exists. And this one's scary, right? But we have it. So this is why, again, François Rabelais said, "Science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme." Science without conscience is but the ruin of your soul. And he said that in the Renaissance, and he was completely right at the time, he's still right today. You can really screw up if you develop a lot of science and no wisdom. This is why, again, Isaac Asimov was like an amazing writer. Isaac Asimov, one of the best science fiction writers of all times. And he said, the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. Now, I would like to ask you guys, what is your definition of wisdom?
Qualcuno vuole dare una definizione? Di saggezza, wisdom.
What is your personal definition of wisdom? Tell me.
So, wisdom could be like the ability to do good actions that are considered to be good and that could help other people and yourself.
Okay, what was the key word about everything you said? You said deduction, you said yourself, you said helping. What is the most important of the three words? Deduction, yourself, or helping? Well, I'm going to argue that this is yourself. The definition of wisdom is knowing yourself first. And again, this is not my definition. This is the definition that before Socrates was written on this temple in Delphi. Now, Delphi, you have to go one day, really. It's an amazing place. It's in Greece, and it's like the European Machu Picchu. No, you don't have to travel to the Machu Picchu to see an amazing mountain temple. You just go to Greece and you travel to Delphi and you will see this mountain temple. And on the top of it, it was written, if you know yourself, you will know the universe and the gods. And this is when Socrates was traveling there, and he found that so beautiful, he made it his motto, right? The motto of Socrates is gnotiseoton, know thyself, know yourself. And according to Socrates, but also according to the people who built the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, knowing yourself is the source of all wisdom. So you could define wisdom in so many ways, I agree. And so many philosophers have defined wisdom in so many ways. But in the Western and actually also the Eastern tradition, knowing yourself is the single most important way of achieving wisdom. So let's do that a little bit. I mean, during the Renaissance, people were talking about the universe, but they were also talking about human beings. That's why it was called humanism, right? Humanism was about studying human beings, trying to understand their anatomy, and a little bit their psychology as well, trying to understand all that. Well, if we are in the second Renaissance, we have to study human beings as well. And, well, human beings do that already. I mean, this exists. The name of the guy is Neil Harbison, and he's the first human being to be officially recognized as a cyborg. So the guy has been officially recognized by law as a cyborg. So a mix between machine and human beings. He put an antenna in his skull, right? He's not wearing it, it's not a cloth, it's inside his brain. So if you pull it, you're going to kill him. And it's kind of useless, to be honest. It allows him to have synesthesia, right? You've heard about synesthesia in Italian as well. Synesthesia is when you associate numbers and colors, for example, or notes, musical notes and colors, or days of the week and colors, right? So if you say that 7 is green, then you have synesthesia. Supposedly in neurosciences, everybody has it when they're small, but when we grow up, we tend to lose it, right? Most people lose it, some people keep it. And he had this antenna to have synesthesia all the time. Okay, so and the problem with this antenna already is that you can hack it. That's really terrible. You can hack it. You can send it bad signals and stuff. It's possible. Because it's such a low-level, low-technology antenna anyway. It's not even protected. But let's discuss about that a little bit. You've heard about what Elon Musk has been doing. Who has never seen this picture before? Raise your hand. Well, I'm happy I'm here then. This is a monkey. This is a macaque monkey playing a video game with his brain. So this is not a controller. What he has in his mouth is just something to deliver grape juice, because monkeys love sugar. They really love sugar, so grape juice is going to be like cocaine to them, if you will. And so whenever the monkey wins in this video game, you know, Pong, right? Whenever the monkey wins, he's rewarded with some grape juice. But he has no controller. I mean, he's not playing with a remote controller at all. He's playing with his brain. So this monkey has a microchip. How do you say microchip in Italian? They got it? Okay. So this monkey has a microchip in his brain, and it allows him to play Pong directly. You know, when I was studying neurosciences about 10 years ago, scientists said it was impossible. I remember most of my teachers said it's impossible. I mean, at least for another 20, 50 years. And well, Elon Musk did it in like 5 years. That's how fast we can go there. And of course, he put it on Twitter quite precisely. He said, our product, okay, will enable people who are paralyzed to use their smartphone. But that's the thing, to use their smartphone, and he really says, faster than someone using their thumb. So it means at some point it won't be only for paralyzed people. At some point, your generation is going to be pressured as to whether everybody should have it. you're going to be the one generation that will have to argue about that. And I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, but some people in the room will say that it's a good thing. And some people in the room, when they grow up, they will be on the side of people saying, why not? Maybe if we all had an antenna, could be great. Elon Musk is part of them. He believes that. He believes that machines are evolving so fast that we really need to have those microchips in our brain. Otherwise, artificial intelligence is going to beat us. Of course, I completely disagree with that, even though I like Elon Musk myself. But I'm not even asking you to agree with me. All I'm telling you is that if your generation is looking for purpose, well, this is one of the purposes you could get. Because this debate is going to last 50 years at least. It's going to be a huge debate, and it won't be settled in 5 months. So this is what we can do already.
May I just interrupt
Sure.
for a quick translation? Allora, riassumo in estrema sintesi. È un passaggio importante perché il dottor Aberkan non ha detto non chiedo di essere d'accordo con lo statement, con l'affermazione di Elon Musk, ma è senz'altro qualcosa che già quando io ero studente avevano considerato come un'ipotesi fantascientifica e poi è successo in 5 anni. Quindi la possibilità di usare un microchip nel cervello del macaco qui per per poter comunque comunicare in questo modo senza l'uso del pollice può ovviamente essere benefico per chi ha una paralisi, per esempio, ma indipendentemente da questo la partita si giocherà indipendentemente dalla nostra idea sull'argomento, sul fatto che secondo Elon Musk se non concorriamo con l'intelligenza artificiale, l'intelligenza artificiale potrebbe battere l'umano. Pertanto il dibattito dei prossimi anni, che non si risolverà in qualche mese, sarà l'uso dei microchip a integrazione dell'intelligenza umana. Ok?
Thank you.
Welcome.
So this is what we can do already. This is not a movie, it's a real scientific image. We can microchip a bug to remote control it. This was made in Singapore, and the microchip was implanted in the bug, and you can completely control its motion. You can tell the bug to move right, left, to go ahead, or to go back. We can do that already. And we can even do it with a small worm. So if you study biology, Cenorhabditis elegans is one of the most studied worms in biology, and we can remote control it with light. So we make a genetically modified worm, and by just stimulating with the right light, it's going to stimulate the right neurons, and it is going to make the worm move just as we want. And we can do that already. Because this worm has been so studied that we know every single cell. The female has a little more than 1,000 cells, and the male has about 900 cells. So since we know every single cell, we can control every single neuron, and we can make the worm move in any direction we want. And this was done about 10 years ago. So again, your generation is going to have a lot to think about ethics and what science can do and what science shouldn't do. Because in the 50s already, this technology is that old, it's crazy. You had Professor Delgado at Yale University in the United States. He was implanting microchips in monkeys, and he was also implanting microchips in bulls. And what he could do is that he could stop the bull fighting with a remote control. So he would just press the button here, and the bull would stop fighting. And he could do that in the 50s and 60s. So this is 60 years ago. And he could do that quite easily by just implanting a bull with it wasn't a microchip, it was quite massive. I think it was about this size, but still by putting that in the brain on the top of the head of a bull, he could stop them fighting as he wanted. And as you know, Elon Musk is also selling a prototype of robot as well. This is a real product that was announced by Tesla. So we don't know when it will be released, of course, because Tesla is often late. But still, they've shown that they have the technology to do a helping robot. And I mean, this is cool, right? A helping robot. Everybody now has a Roomba. When you have a Roomba, it's really useful. You can clean the house by yourself. But let me tell you something. This gentleman here was the best hacker in the world. His name was Barnaby Jack, and Barnaby Jack could hack pretty much anything. Here he was showing in Las Vegas how he could hack an ATM, a bancomat. So his hack was called the jackpot, because obviously it was spilling all the bills of the ATM. And you could see him doing it here with fake money, but the point is he could hack 95% of all ATMs. Okay, but Barnaby Jack could do much, much worse than that. He could hack a pacemaker. So you know, right, a pacemaker, or do you say that? Pacemaker. Okay, pacemaker.
Poteva ovviamente manomettere un pacemaker, hack in questo caso una manomissione.
Ok, so c'est manomettere in Italian.
Manomettere when you hack, when you illegally intrude in a system.
Okay, thanks. So, I mean, just imagine a second. In the United States, you know, with the American food, burgers, all that, you've got about 300,000 pacemakers being implanted every year. So every year in the United States, you've got 300,000 heart regulators being put in somebody. 300,000. So if he could hack them, he could kill 300,000 people every year. Maybe you've seen this TV show, Homeland. Maybe some of you have seen that TV show. In this TV show, Homeland, you have one episode where somebody hacks a pacemaker. And in the TV show, they say, oh my God, it's hard to hack a pacemaker because I need the serial number. I need the number of the pacemaker to hack it. Now, Barnaby Jack said, in real life, you don't even need the number. So you can hack, hacking a pacemaker in a TV show is actually harder than hacking a pacemaker in real life. So Barnaby Jack could hack a pacemaker, an insulin pump, and he could even hack boats. You know, container boats, right? He could hack them to sink them in the Pacific.
Dottor Aberkan,
Please.
non solo i pacemaker, ma anche gli iniettori di insulina. Ok? E mentre qualcuno di voi avrà visto la serie Homeland, io ricordo, I do recall that episode, quite fascinating. In un episodio di Homeland stavano cercando di ammazzare sostanzialmente il presidente degli Stati Uniti e nel tentativo di manomettere questo strumento uno dice all'altro abbiamo bisogno del serial number. Invece questo hacker qui, diceva il dottor Aberkan, ha dimostrato che talvolta nella vita reale le cose sono più facili di quanto invece non sia stato riportato nell'episodio, in quell'episodio in questione. Costui è anche in grado di manomettere gli erogatori di insulina, quindi diciamo è abbastanza inquietante come scenario. Thank you.
Esattamente. So, if people get microchips in their head, you can be absolutely sure they can be hacked. It's not even a debate there. If it's got silicon, it can be hacked. It's that simple. And again, if everybody has a microchip, you could think about the consequences of hacking it. Just to give you an idea, there's been like a whole trial. How do you say trial in Italian? Trial?
Clinico.
No, not trial.
What did you say?
Procès.
Ah, processo.
Okay.
C'è stato un processo.
Okay, so there's been a whole trial, processo, in Canada because a hacker had hacked sex toys.
Oh, no.
Right.
My God.
And,
Okay.
and they had hacked massively sex toys, like thousands of them. So this is how bad it can get. That's my point. And you can hack anything. If it's a webcam or whatever, if it's connected, you can hack it. And now you're going to remember, right? I'm happy to have brought this example. I'm quite sure it's going to stick to you.
It always works.
All right. So, some time ago, what you're seeing here is President Bill Clinton and his Vice President Al Gore. And this was the early times of the internet, right? At the very beginning of the public internet, of course, the internet started before, but in the 90s, President Clinton wanted to show that having high connection was important. So to show that he was going to schools in America, it could be a school like yours, and the president was coming to install some copper cables, fiber optic wasn't used at the time, and he would use copper cables to show how important the internet was. Okay. But now, again, the next generation of that could be directly in your brain. And you see that's the problem, because people think, and they can be right, that we produce a lot of knowledge. That's true. Knowledge is exploding. We produce a lot of knowledge, and I really mean a lot. And we can't read all that. It's true. A human being can't read even like all the knowledge he needs to know in a small field. We can't do that anymore. So people say, look, it's going to be like in the movie Matrix. You just upload the knowledge into your brain. You have a microchip, that's going to be cool. And this is going to upload the knowledge straight to your brain, right? But again, it could become like that as well. Again, this is my point of view here. This is how you do foie gras, right? The French specialty that we have for Christmas, but this is how it's made. And it wasn't invented by the French, it was actually invented by the Egyptians. So you take a goose, you force it to swallow the food until it almost dies, and then you kill it anyway, and you take the liver, and the liver is going to be like crazy fat, and you're going to eat it. Hooray. But the point is, if some of you have read my book, I've been told that some of you have, there's a small comic inside. All right? I put a small comic, and I said, look, sometimes bad education could become like that, right? In the future, it will go like, okay, I've got this amount of knowledge to put into your brain, so I'm going to jam it by force, and people are going to be disgusted, right? So maybe the microchip could fix that, but again, I'm not on this side. But let's talk about psychology a little bit. So who in the room knows about this experiment? Okay, thanks. So this experiment is called the Ash Conformity Experiment. It's a very simple experiment that shows that we human beings, we care a lot about what other people think. I mean, check TikTok, check Instagram. We care. What other people think about you and what other people tell you, it's quite important for us. Now, Winston Churchill said, when you're 20, you care about what people think about you. When you're 40, you don't care anymore. And when you're 60, you realize they were not even thinking about you in the first place. But that's quite true. And I will let you make this experience yourself. But this experiment is very simple. The psychologist put three lines on a piece of paper, and one line on another piece of paper. And he asked people, which of the three lines is of the same size as this one? So which is it? Right, it's number, yeah, from here I can't see, but it's 3, right? Or 2? 2. It's 2, okay. So it's number 2, all right. Okay, so that's simple. But now imagine the psychologist is paying 20 people to tell you it's number 3. So he puts 20 actors in the room, and those 20 actors are going to say, they're actors, so they're good. I mean, they're going to convince you. They go like, no, it's number 3. It's number 2, sorry. Yeah, it's number 2. Fuck, actually, which one is it? Yeah, it's number 3.
So the correct one is 2, and
yeah.
then tries to convince
all right.
It's 3.
So sorry about that. So imagine he's paying actors to tell you this is number 3.
For the sake of argument.
Now, how many people will change their mind, you think? How many people? Almost all. It's about 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 people, if they're told by actors that something is completely wrong, they're still going to do it. And this is called the Ash Conformity Experiment. And this is so interesting because, look, we evolved. We human beings, we had to survive. And if you go back 300,000 years ago, when we were in the savannah, what was most important? Being right or staying in the group? Obviously staying in the group, right? Because if you were right and you were kicked out of the group, you were dead. And even if you survived, you would not have children because you were outside the group. So the point is, we are the descendants of the people who stayed in the group. And since we are the descendants of the people who stayed in the group, 8 out of 10 people will prefer to stay in the group and be wrong than to leave the group and be right. And I really let you meditate on that. This is another experiment here. This is a small test. You ask somebody, you give them this, and you ask them to find a way to put the candle along the wall so that no wax falls on the table. So you have to find a way to put the candle so that it burns, but not a single drop of wax is going to fall on the table. Okay, the solution is this. It's not quite important. But here's the experiment. Imagine I take this room and I divide this room in two groups. People on my right, I tell them, if you succeed, I'm going to give you 100 euros each. So I take half of the room and I tell you, if you succeed on this test, I'm going to give you 100 euros. Now the other half of the room, I tell them, if you succeed, I'm going to shake your hand. Which group you think is going to succeed better? The 100 euros or the handshake? And you're wrong. It's definitely the handshake. The handshake group is performing better in any culture at any age. So you could do it in Japan, you could do it in Brazil. It's still going to be the handshake group.
And why is that so?
So why is it so? The reason is rewards. When you give somebody a reward, it is to consolidate a behavior you have already taught at, if you will, at school. Reward is good if you've already seen it in the classroom. But in that case, this test was new. It had never been trained before. So reward is good for training. If you want to repeat a behavior, you need a reward. And then the group of the 100 euros will succeed. But if you want pure creativity that you've never studied before, I mean, it's a completely new test, you never had a teacher to tell you the solution, then the reward is actually bad. And in psychology, it's called the over-justification effect. Over-justification effect. And the over-justification effect shows that if you want predictability, you should use a reward. And this is why we use rewards at school a lot, because the educational system needs to have some level of predictability, because after all, it's global, right? So we need to be able to compare students and we need to be able to be predictive. We couldn't do it any other way. But the problem is that if you want to make it predictive, you need rewards. If you want to make people creative, you should avoid rewards. And again, this is very counterintuitive. Another experiment by this professor, Charis Nixon, you can see it on YouTube, it's an amazing one. It just shows you that you can tell people they're stupid and they're going to believe you. You can tell people they're idiots and they will believe you. Let me show you the example. So she's an English teacher, and she's asking her students to make anagrams. How do you say anagrams in Italian? The same? Anagram. Okay. Okay. So could you find me the anagrams of this? Tab. Yeah. Okay. And the third one is a little hard, but American. Very good. Okay. So you could find it in like 1 minute, 1 minute and a half. So okay. It takes 1 minute, 1 minute and a half to even non-native speakers, because you're non-native speakers, to find the anagrams, okay? So here's the experiment she's doing. She goes to the classroom and she gives this test to all the students except 3. 3 students don't have this test, okay? She tells the students, as soon as you're done, as soon as you've finished, raise your hand, okay? So the students find it quite easy, and after 2 minutes, they raise their hand. But 3 students in the room have this test. And, I mean, you can look around as much as you want. There's no anagram of whirlpool and there's no anagram of leprechaun in English. So you can't find it, okay? But the third one is still okay. You can still find it. And she has proved that all the classroom could find it. But, as you understand, here you find it after successive levels of difficulty, like in a video game, right? It's easy, then it's medium, then it's hard. Right? This way, it gives you trust. It builds your confidence. You know, you go like, oh my God, I can do it. I succeed, I can do it. Okay, so you become self-confident. But if you have this one, well, the students will say there's no anagram in the third one as well. Because their brain will tell them, don't even try. Their brain will tell them, look, it can't work and you're stupid. And why it's really painful for the students is that they see all the classroom raising their hand. So they go like, oh my God, I'm stupid. Oh my, everybody's succeeding, and it feels so bad. And Charis Nixon wanted to show that In 15 minutes, you can convince a student that they're stupid. In 15 minutes. So please never ever believe you're stupid yourself. Never. Because if it's that simple to convince anybody that they're stupid in 15 minutes, anybody on the planet, be they Einstein or Tesla or anybody, will think at some point in their life that they're stupid. Now, if you think you're stupid, let me tell you, you're wrong. It's very easy for your brain to believe that it doesn't fit and that it will fail. So this is called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. That's the word in English for this experiment of psychology, learned helplessness. And, oh yeah, you want to? Go ahead.
Helplessness, senso di inadeguatezza acquisito, ok? Cioè dall'esperimento è venuto senso di inadeguatezza acquisito, contratto, imparato, d'accordo?
Grazie. So another experiment here. Jane Elliott. In the 60s, she made an experiment that was just amazing. She took her students and she told them, look, all the blue eyes, you're going to go on the left, and all the non-blue eyes, you're going to go on the right. Okay? So I take all the blue eyes, I put them on your left, and I take all the not blue eyes and I put them on your right. And then she told her students, look, the blue eyes, they're smarter. I mean, it's genetics, okay? They're smarter, they're greater, they learn faster. They're the master race, if you will. They're the best. Okay, and of course the non-blue eyes, they're stupid. I will teach you, but you're still a little stupid, right? And to really differentiate, she gave the blue eyes a special scarf, and they had extra dessert at that, when they were having food, and they had a separate sports room as well. So really the blue eyes, they were kept for 2 days. It was only 2 days. They were kept in the idea that they were so smart and so good. And you know what happened, obviously? The mathematics level of the blue eyes skyrocketed, exploded. It became so good, they could actually be in the next year of their education. And the mathematics level of the black eyes, of the non-blue eyes, failed. They could actually not even succeed at exams they were doing 1 year ago. And she could do all that in 2 days. In 2 days, she could convince her students that if they have blue eyes, they're smarter and they would actually learn better. You had one researcher in Italy who actually did similar experiments. It was Maria Montessori in Naples. Yeah, I let you translate if you think. Do you think it's needed? Okay.
Penso che, insomma, un esperimento molto simile è stato condotto ovviamente dalla professoressa Montessori, medico italiano che noi conosciamo bene. L'esperimento è chiaro a tutti? Ok.
Okay. So, to wrap it up, when I studied neurosciences, I studied what's called non-invasive. Now, non-invasive is when you don't have to put it in the brain. There are so many ways that you could make implants that actually don't cross your skull, don't go inside your brain. This is a great experiment that's working. The lady you see here is blind. She can't see anything. But by putting this on her tongue, this small stuff on her tongue, the camera can translate images, and she can, after 6 months, she has some sense of vision. Because her brain still has the neurons of vision, it's just that her eyes don't work. But the brain is actually the organ creating vision, not the eye. The eye is just sending the information. But the feeling of seeing is created in the brain, precisely here in the occipital lobe. And by training after 6 months, she doesn't need anything put inside her brain. All she needs is a camera and something on her tongue that she can take off whenever she wants, and that can create images for her. And she really says, I mean, she can see paintings, she can identify portraits, even though she's blind. Now, let me speak about darker things. Who's this guy? Come on, you don't know who's this guy?
No. Do you know?
Okay, he's Joseph Goebbels.
Oh my.
Who was Goebbels?
Goebbels?
Yeah, he was one of the scariest men on earth. He was the chief of propaganda for Hitler. Now, let me tell you the story of this picture. Yeah, I'm almost done. I will ask you to... Thanks. Okay, let me tell you the story of this picture. In this picture, Goebbels has just learned that the photographer is a Jew.
Oh my God.
Okay? So he could capture really the look of like, I want to kill you. And this is why this picture is so significant, because it's like, I want to kill you. My point is, science was actually very, very high in Germany during World War II. Science was extremely highly developed, so much so that the Americans took actually a Nazi scientist, Werner von Braun, for their space program. The American space program was developed thanks to a Nazi scientist, Werner von Braun. And he was a real Nazi. He had his card, and he had Jews work forcibly in his projects. He was a real one. But the Americans took him because he was so smart. So this is all about science without conscience there. You could be technologically advanced. You can. But it's not the point. You need to have wisdom as well. So in my book, I created a very, very controversial term. You have no idea how controversial this term has been, especially in France. But I was very happy to create this term, the idea of neurofascism, which is defined as a political system for which the brain would only be useful for three things, namely productivity, pleasure or entertainment, or power. And that's all. The brain would only be used for that. The only reason you would have a brain would be for productivity or fun or power. Now, what am I missing here?
Cos'è che non abbiamo ancora detto? Cos'è che non ha aggiunto il dottor Aberkan in queste lei? Cosa non ha ancora aggiunto il dottore?
Yeah, which one's missing there? For example, yeah?
Know thyself.
Yeah, well, self-knowledge, okay, yeah. Self-knowledge is not necessarily productive, but look, it's not here. Good. What else? Sorry?
Creativity, someone
Yeah,
said.
yeah, but make it simpler. Simpler. Now, you know, happiness, for example. How about that? Happiness is good. Now, it's not the same as entertainment. Fun, pleasure, entertainment is not the same as happiness. If you study philosophy, you learn that entertainment and happiness, they're not the same thing. But, you know, maybe happiness could be interesting. But the more we delve into neurotechnologies, the more we tend to forget about happiness. And it took me half a minute to have you say happiness. Now you're about 300, 200 here. And it was not even evident for you to say happiness, right? Maybe that's the problem. So, these are my last slides. And again, this is a bet here, so I will really need your attention because this is going to be a little technical. But my bet was that you are completely smart enough to understand everything I'm going to give you here. And believe me, you are. And in fact, you will understand everything I'm going to be giving you here. So, here's the discussion. We had a tweet, quite an interesting one, of biologist Richard Dawkins. Now, he's a good biologist. This guy is really good. I mean, he's smart, he's good. But in my opinion, he's a little fucked up as well. And I'm going to show you why. Here's the tweet here. It's one thing to deplore eugenics. I will tell you what eugenics is. On ideological, political, moral grounds, it's quite another to conclude that it wouldn't work in practice. Of course it would. It works for cows, horses, pigs, dogs, and roses, so why on earth wouldn't it work for humans? Facts ignore ideology, which is true. What is eugenics? Eugenics is the idea that you should select which humans can reproduce or not, so that you could select the smartest ones and the healthiest ones and the whatever you want ones, right? This is called eugenics. The whole program of the Nazi Party was that. The whole point of the Nazi Party was we should select a certain race for our nation, and some other races are actually screwing up our nation by putting bad genes and bad things in our blood. And what's really funny, though, is that Hitler had identified an ideal blonde with blue-eyed German guy, and he had put his picture everywhere as the perfect German. The problem is that the guy was half Jewish. Anyway, so eugenics is when you think you should decide which human beings can reproduce or not, and also if you should genetically modify human beings as well. Why not, right? Maybe we could all be genetically modified to have blue eyes and to be tall and maybe to have wings or whatever or whatnot. And I like the comment here by Ned Hartley, who says, all of Dawkins' tweets, they make even more sense if you add Mr. Bond at the end of them, right? As if the guy was a James Bond villain. But okay, I mean, biologically, he's right. Biologically, selecting reproduction, selective breeding, it works for horses, it works for pigs, it works for cows, it works for roses. And I'm going to tell you that, to some extent, it's going to work for human beings as well. But what's wrong with that?
Allora, la domanda è: cosa c'è di sbagliato in questa teoria di eugenetica per la quale, se funziona con mucche, maiali e cavalli, di fare la cosiddetta riproduzione selettiva, no? Il breeding di un cavallo da corsa ovviamente richiede che ci sia un accoppiamento tra cavalli puro sangue, eccetera, eccetera. Allora, che cosa impedisce da un punto, che cosa ci impedisce di dire che si può fare?
Okay.
What's
Yes,
wrong?
please.
Cos'è sbagliato?
Yeah. Okay, give him the microphone, yeah, thanks, because I don't hear too well here. But go ahead.
I don't want to be controversial, but maybe because humans are considered to have more free will than animals, even if animals also.
But that's an argument, because even if you're vegan, today animals can be properties. That's true. The law today is that animals can be property. Okay. I don't say whether it's right or wrong. I just mean that today the law for humans and the law for animals is not the same. Okay, that's one point. The gentleman over there? Yeah, and then you on your side. Okay.
Okay. Also, from an actual moral standpoint, it doesn't really make sense. Mainly because we have no right to choose who gets to live on and who gets not to. So it's just that moral dilemma that makes this theory so difficult to actually take down.
That's absolutely right. The question is, for pigs or for horses or for roses, human beings decide. But for human beings, who's going to decide? If you have eugenics for human beings, you're going to create a super class of special human beings who have the right to decide. Because if you select roses and you select pigs and you select horses, you are above them in terms of the law. Politically, you're above roses and pigs and whatever. Pigs can't vote, but human beings can vote. So that would be a problem there. Yes, sir?
Eugenics is fundamentally a racist. So basically saying exactly that, it's actually being racist.
And yeah, exactly. In one sentence, eugenics is fundamentally racist because the definition of racism is that you consider that certain genes should be better than other ones, or certain ethnics should be better than other ones. So that's another problem. Who's going to choose? Because it's not that self-evident. For example, blue eyes, they're 5,000 years old. Blue eyes appeared only 5,000 years before, yeah? Yeah. I won't be able to take the other ones, unfortunately, but we'll take questions after that.
We will though become the same.
Sorry?
We will fundamentally all become the same.
Exactly, yes. That's an extremely smart comment there. What's the probability that we end all standardized human beings? That we end up being all the same? Now, being all the same is not only an aesthetical problem, it's not only a cultural problem. If we were all the same, diseases would kill us more easily. If everybody has the same genetics, then a disease can kill everybody quite fast. Because the idea of having diversified genetics is also to resist diseases, especially viruses. For example, in Ireland in the 19th century, they were cultivating potatoes. But all the potatoes were the same. They had made a clone of the same potato for all the islands. What happened? There was one disease, it killed all the potatoes, and it destroyed half of the population of island. So being all the same is going to be a problem of public health as well. But now let's go to the technical part. And again, I'm completely telling you that you're smart enough to understand everything I'm going to give you here. This is the answer that this researcher here, so okay, he agrees he's Christian, maybe that's the point, but he's also a scientist. And the top scientist, actually, Sean Renti, great scientist in Australia. And this is his argument here. And this is a very scientific one. His answer, and I'm going to explain you in detail, is that even if you chose which gene you keep and which gene you don't keep, actually you cannot really make someone better, because all the time you're going to have a balance to achieve, and if you want to change a certain gene, it's going to mess up with something else. There is some kind of balance. There's no idea that you can make a Superman with genetics. People thought that in Germany, but dialogically it's wrong, because the whole point of evolution is that it has selected already the right balance between what would work and what would not work. Let me give you examples. He said, look, okay, imagine you want to do eugenics. So, first sentence, just read the first sentence. Would you like to rev up your P53 cancer suppressor gene, resulting in a reduced rate of cancer? So, okay, your physician, the medical community tells you, or tells a mother, look, we could boost this gene, P53, and it's going to reduce your cancer rate. Right, that's cool, right? So we want to do that. Well, he says, oops, if you do that, you've got Huntington's disease. And it will destroy your coordination and eventually your mind before killing you by 50. So you go like, oh, maybe if I increase this gene, it's going to be great because this gene is excellent against cancer. So if I boost it, that's going to prevent me from having cancer. The problem is that the very reason Huntington's disease exists is that in Huntington's disease, this gene is too active. So, okay, imagine you want to move something else. Would you like to nano-engineer your cells to decrease their membrane sialic acid content, thus making you more resistant to cholera and the flu? Well, that's great. You would not have flu anymore, influenza, right? You would not have it, and you would not have cholera anymore as well. I don't think you ever had cholera in the first place, but okay. Well, he says, this is his answer. Careful there, I've just given you an allele for cystic fibrosis, mucoviscidosis, I think.
No, la fibrosi cistica.
Yeah, okay. Right, so, right, if you want to change genetically your cells so that you will never have the flu, too bad, you're going to have cystic fibrosis. How about malaria? Malaria kills so many people. Malaria is the disease killing most people on planet Earth today. So how would you like to chemically modify your blood to make you immune to the trypanosome that causes malaria? And this is his answer. Choose your adventure. Would you like an allele for sickle cell anemia, beta thalassemia, or the G6PD metabolic disorder? They're all terrible disease.
Eh sì, scusate, allora anemia perniciosa, la talassemia beta o il disturbo metabolico G6PD. Okay? Sono tutte e tre.
Another example, are you a woman who would like to have stronger bones before the menopause? Well, why not? You're a woman, you would like to have stronger bones. Well, hope you weren't planning to see your grandchildren, because the gene you would have to move to give you stronger bones is actually going to give you more risks to have fractures before your menopause. So here is his conclusion, and I want you to really listen to it. All these and more delightfully double-edged genetic swords. How would you translate that?
Queste lame a doppio taglio. Okay?
Ecco, doppio taglio. All these and more delightfully double-edged genetic swords are example of what in biology we call antagonistic pleiotropy. Okay, that's the term. The scientific term is antagonistic pleiotropy. So I suppose in Italian it's pleiotropia antagonista. But what it means is that if you want to improve genetically someone, you're going to mess up with something else. The idea that you could create Superman and remove all the defects is wrong. In biology, we know it's wrong. It's all about a compromise. There's always a compromise in your body, and this compromise was selected by evolution. So here he goes. He says, you see, Darwinian evolution, that primal force, is already eugenicist. Of course it is, because we've been selected. For example, here most of the people have rather white skin. Well, that was a selection. We didn't start like that. We developed a rather whiter skin because we moved up norther. But in England 10,000, 15,000 years ago, the skin wasn't even white. That's a selection because we needed more vitamin D. And there was less sun, so we need more vitamin D. So whiter skin was helping us get more vitamin D. Okay, so you see Darwinian evolution, that primal force is already a eugenicist. It already selects for increased reproductive fitness within mankind's gene pool. And if the genes that make you more fecund or more robust as a young person happen to deteriorate your brain or wreck your old age, so what does it mean? If you can be fitter and have more babies when you're young, but because of that you're going to die early, he says, well, my friend, you've had some hard genetic choices already made for you. Eugenics would need hard choices. What do we improve? What do we change? Well, nature does that, and those are hard choices, and they've been made for us before. So this was by far the most technical part of that talk. That's why I kept it for the end. My last slide. This gentleman, who's a Freddie Mercury lookalike, is one of my heroes. And his name is Richard Francis Burton, Sir Richard Francis Burton. He was a gentleman, an extraordinary gentleman. That's how Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would call him. He spoke 29 languages. 29 languages. And he could speak the Neapolitan dialect perfectly. So when he traveled to Naples, he could speak the Neapolitan dialect perfectly, even though he was British. And he's buried in this super cool tomb in England, because he was a Muslim, but his wife was a Catholic, and they got buried in this huge tent in the Mortlake Cemetery in Great Britain. And this is going to be his final word here, to give you a purpose before anyway we're all going to die, and before you end up in your version of this tomb. This is, according to Richard Francis Burton, how you should live. To seek the truth, to glad the heart, such is of life the higher law, whose difference is of man's degree, the man of gold, the man of straw. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Grazie al dottor Aberkan per questa conferenza veramente illuminante. Siamo partiti dal Rinascimento italiano, per questo lo ringrazio anche per aver iniziato con l'Italia, con Leonardo da Vinci, con Michelangelo, per essere arrivato poi alle nuove ricerche scientifiche. Io una domanda soltanto avrei da fare sul ruolo dello scienziato adesso, se effettivamente deve collaborare con la politica o deve essere invece indipendente dalla politica, perché abbiamo visto che ci deve essere molta relazione tra politica e scienza, altrimenti non si va da nessuna parte. E se questa collaborazione deve essere così importante oppure no.
È infatti piuttosto un problema di cultura scientifica, perché è impossibile avere scienze totalmente indipendenti dalla politica. Nella storia umana più o meno non è mai successo. Galileo, ad esempio, anche Giordano Bruno, è difficilissimo avere scienze che congiuntivo, che si separino della politica. E non conosco esempi, quindi avere una cultura scientifica per tutti mi sembra la migliore soluzione. È per questo che faccio queste conferenze e che scrivo questi libri.
Ok, grazie mille. Ci sono domande dal pubblico? Possiamo? Sì, ok.
Ok. Okay, I'm really sorry there. Okay, I don't want to be politic there, so I'm going to take another 2 questions from you guys, but not a single girl has asked a question here. So I will try to balance it a little, but still, shoot your shot. But after that, I'm going to take 1 or 2 more. I see other boys raising their hands, but after that, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we've talked about how we see technology being developed and how we should handle the wisdom with all these new technologies being discovered. I just wanted to make a point that, well, we've seen a lot of technology coming from Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he's one of the best person we should trust for the future of humanity. We've seen a lot of controversies, especially on his Twitter. You've posted some Twitter posts. And there was a time when, during the COVID pandemic, he wanted to open factories despite there was a high rate of people being infected. And he wanted to open factories just to keep his business running. And that is not very human. Like, he didn't want to do that for the progress of humanity. So, I see this person, if you've seen the movie Don't Look Up from Adam McKay, there was an analogy made by, in the script, that said, we really shouldn't trust a businessman for the future of the planet. That's what I see Elon Musk as. I don't really think he's one that I
Well, that's
trust.
a very good point. And anyway, nowadays everybody's controversial. It's going to be impossible for anybody to not be controversial, from Barack Obama to Elon Musk. And I completely agree with your point. For me, this is way more dangerous than having reopened the factories, because the point is that his factories have had very little human workers, for real. They were made for legislation. The legislations that were regarding his factories were not made for factories with so many machines. But still, okay, that was a controversial point. And he actually got sued by the state of California. But for me, this is the real thing, because the peer pressure, so you know what peer pressure is when people tell you everybody's smoking, so you should smoke. Now, what's going to happen when, imagine you have children, or even yourself, you want to become a lawyer or a trader, whatever, and people tell you, look, I've got this lawyer, he's got a microchip in his brain, and he knows all the laws by heart because he's got the microchip. So I'm not going to have you as a lawyer, because the one with the microchip is better. What will you be able to do? Even if it's not even the law, right? No law forces you to get even that. It could happen though, but in China, I don't know. But even if the law said, you're free, you don't have to put it, except if you want a job, well, you're going to have this microchip. Of course, your generation might not all have regular jobs. We know that you've got so many independents now, especially after the lockdowns, and it's becoming the norm, apparently. So I don't even know if your generation will have regular jobs. I never had a regular job myself, to be honest. My main job was consultant, so I never had a salary, if you will, even when I was doing my PhD. But anyway, to me, this is way, way more dangerous. But to answer your question, it is true we shouldn't trust businessmen with the future of science. The problem is, it's already the case. I mean, Google is better than any research agency in AI today. And we shouldn't trust politicians either, because Nazi Germany proved what politicians can do as well, and it's not the only example. So who should we trust? The people altogether, humanity at large. But that's an excellent point. So yeah. Yes, okay, just one more boy, because I said yes to this gentleman, but then after, yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't have time, is that it?
Sì, salve, sono un insegnante di questa scuola, volevo ringraziarla per la sua conferenza molto illuminante. Volevo farle questa domanda.
Non la sento bene, mi scusi.
Mi sente adesso?
Meglio.
Sì, benissimo. Leggendo qualche tempo fa la biografia di Ernest Hemingway, ho trovato che, partecipando a un convegno di un partito comunista abbastanza risicato all'interno degli Stati Uniti...
Avrò bisogno di averlo in inglese, mi scusi, ora non capisco più.
Congress.
Ah sì, ok.
Lui ha affermato che il fascismo è una montagna di menzogne affermata da persone arroganti.
Affermate I understood, montagna di bugie.
Da persone arroganti.
Sì.
io vorrei sapere adesso se un cervello veramente ergonomico può aiutarci a fare in modo da evitare che queste menzogne, questa montagna di menzogne possa condizionarci.
An ergonomic way of using your brain, would that be key to unveiling that heap of lies?
Mi riferisco non alle banali fake news di cui si parla molto, ma alle montagne di menzogne che possono creare un regime dittatoriale e totalitario, come il fascismo e il nazismo. Abbiamo visto adesso il dottor Goebbels e quindi è chiaro che a questo punto è molto importante evitare che la storia possa ritornare su quelle strade tragiche.
Okay. He's asking not only her the word how to detect fake news, but most importantly how to reinterpret the information that is a heap of lies, so that
Do not run the same errors again. Should I repeat that?
No, it's good. So thank you so much for this question. Well, it's true that, as you know, even scientific truth is always mobilized by politics. You had it on both sides of World War II. You had eugenics, okay, and the Nazis were saying there is such a thing as a perfect human being, and we need to. And this was considered. That's my point. It was considered scientific truth. It was, at the time, even top scientists who were supposed independent, like Alexis Carrel, he got the Nobel Prize. He was supposed to be independent. He said, yes, Hitler is right. So it's extremely hard. Even Heidegger, right, the great philosopher Heidegger was like completely pro-Nazi. And, okay, I know it's... okay, so you're right, okay. Okay, no, not eugenics. Let me rephrase it cleanly. Let me rephrase it cleanly because I've been in the Heidegger debate and I'm actually pro-Heidegger myself. So I was overdoing it. Okay, look, I'm completely agreeing with you there. Okay, let me clarify the point. I am a Heideggerian philosopher myself. I was overdoing it for, as you know, we can't enter that polemic here. But you know, it got registered at the party. Right. So from like, I know this does. No, I didn't say that. All I said is that he was agreeing with the general politics of the party, and which is true. Okay, but I mean, if we compare it to other philosophers, but this is true. There's like a whole controversy on Heidegger, and I didn't realize that it would, you know, it's like Louis Ferdinand Seguin, and anyway. But the point is, you had very smart people endorsing. You had very smart people endorsing politics that turned out to be terrible. And it's not only the case of Alexis Carrel, so forget about Heidegger, indeed, okay. But let's take Alexis Carrel, and he was like completely pro-eugenics, like totally pro-eugenics. And on the Soviet side, you had Lysenkoism. And Lysenkoism was the idea that genetics doesn't exist. And it was endorsed by top Soviet scientists. So the point is, there is no way that you could create a committee that would say what is right or what is wrong. Because the moment you do that, this committee is going to have too much power. And the committee is going to be right for the first 10 years, maybe the first 15 years. And after that, the committee is going to be so politically powerful that you can be sure it's going to be corrupted. Because I don't see a single example where creating such a committee that would decide what is right or what is wrong would not be hijacked and would not end up corrupted after a very short period of time. So Mark Twain said you need to change politicians like diapers, and for the same reasons. Unfortunately, whatever has political power, you will need to do that. And if you create scientific committees of this kind, you will need to change them very often. So I think the best way would be to randomize them, to take random scientists and to randomize them as much as possible.
Ok, grazie mille per la risposta. Però cerchiamo di rimanere nel tema scientifico senza polemizzare nella storia, che non ha senso in questa conferenza. Quindi rimaniamo nel tema della scienza e della coscienza.
So no girl can ask any question. Okay, so you and then at least one girl, please. Okay,
my question.
Please, just some silence so that the gentleman can ask his question. Please.
My question is where the human start and the machine, when the human finish and the machine begin? Because in this example, for example, the people is not really liberty for decide have a chip or not. Because in this choice, if you decide don't have a chip, delay to the society, and there aren't
Carry on.
and you don't stay in the group.
No, in the group, yeah. So that's peer pressure. People will tell you, if you don't do it, you're not really a citizen. Or it could happen. I'm not even saying this will happen. All I'm saying is that your generation will decide whether it happens or not. It's your generation that's going to make it happen in any way. And it won't be, supposedly it won't be the same in every country. But if the job market becomes globalized, you know, today, young people educated in Italy are in competition with Indians and Chinese online for jobs. And even after the lockdown, you see all the new job proposals for Apple and Google and Facebook. They don't even ask you to be American anymore, even if it's to work with the American teams. So there's going to be this kind of global competition there. And I really suggest that to be on the top of the competition, you should focus on being happy first. Because if you're fulfilled, how do you say fulfilled in Italian? Sorry? I didn't hear. Okay. All right. So if you focus on that, on fulfillment, you're going to make the right decisions about this, I suppose, and also you're going to be more competitive. But it is true that even people who would never want to be what I call neurofascist could bring a future where neurofascism becomes the norm, because the moment you tell people, you put this microchip, but it's not for your fulfillment, it's for your productivity. So even if you have somebody who's like smart and open-minded and not a neurofascist at all, someone just open-minded, after 10 years, the brain would be limited to productivity. After 20 years, everybody has a chip, so the brain is only useful for productivity. And if we don't ask the questions now, I don't think we can go back. That's true. All right, one lady for the final question. Okay, you, over there.
Okay, so yeah, my question is about the bird. So in the third chapter of the bird, you state that man by nature cannot commit any crimes at all. And if they do so, it's because their nerves have been destroyed or are like consumed. So therefore, would it be right to say that people who commit crimes can be in a way justified by the environment they have lived in?
I do. You know, there was a case in the United States where somebody had killed someone else. So they were guilty of murder, first-degree murder. And it was discovered when the person was studied medically. It was discovered they had a small tumor, not in their brain, but in their kidneys. Now, what do the kidneys produce apart urine? You know, there's a hormone that the kidneys produce. Adrenalina. Right? Now, on the top, adrenalina means the hormone produced by the top of the kidneys. Right? Adrenal, renal means the kidney, and there's a gland on top of the kidneys that produce adrenaline. Now, when you're high on adrenaline, you can become extremely violent, extremely. And that person killed someone, and they should have been, it was in the United States, I think it was in Texas, I'm not sure, but it was in a state that had the death penalty, so the person had to be killed. And the person was not killed because it was demonstrated that they had this tumor on their adrenal gland that was making them produce more adrenaline than normal, so that they would not react normally. This is one case. Okay, you could say it's genetic because it's a tumor, but a tumor is half environment, half genetic, right? We don't really know. But it could be even different. You see sometimes on the TV, somebody gets their car damaged, they take a gun, they shoot the guy. Right? Just for a damage to your car, shoot a gun, and you kill the person. Now, psychologically speaking, how does that happen? It happens because you accumulate a lot of frustration, right? A lot. You know, like a piggy bank. How do you call that in Italian? Piggy bank. Okay, right? So you put sand. So imagine, take a scenario, it's completely fictitious, but a guy has taken a shotgun and shot someone who damaged their car, but this person was like messed up by their boss, and their wife left him, and he lost custody of his children, and this and that, and all this frustration accumulated without ever being resolved. And then one small frustration more, and the person goes mad and takes a shotgun and kills someone. Now, legally speaking, the person is responsible. There's no doubt about that. I'm not arguing that you should free the person at all. I mean, somebody died. But condemning, sanctioning, making sure people go to jail, this is one thing. But understanding what happened is another thing. And this is what I try to explain in my book. That, for example, I developed the concept of psychological scar, but in French it's a psychiatrice. I don't know how it was translated in the... How do you say scar in Italian? Psichiatrice. Quindi, this is the term I created in the book, psichiatrice. Let me explain you why. If you have a scar in your hand, if you shake hand with someone, you tell them, don't shake too hard, because this is going to hurt me. Right? You know you have the scar. If it's a physical scar, you know you have it. But if it's a psychological scar, you don't. You have no idea you have it. And the only way you can know you have it is that other people tell you, why did you react like that? Well, I reacted like that because I have this deep scar. I didn't know about it. But now, since people saw me get crazy and get upset, they know I've got this scar, and it's not healed. So that's why I created this concept of psichiatrice, because the regular cicatrice, you know you have it, but the psichiatrice, you don't know you have it.
And after all, in American English, they say traffic range for a reason.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, I suppose that's it. We can't have any more questions, or you decide. You have one? Okay, great.
Hi. I had a question. Before you talked about the fact that science has a link to ethics, and for what concerns me, my personal thought is that when someone, you mentioned that Nazi scientists science was used by Americans for the space.
Yeah, for the space program.
Okay, and I didn't quite get a thing. Is that for you or in general? Is that right or wrong? Because in my personal idea, as it comes for art or for science or for anything that is not, immediately linked to ethics, why would I think that an invention can be judged by the person who made it? I mean, I can be the worst person in the world, but still make something good, or at least something that leads to a scientific progress.
Well, this is a very good question. In philosophy, there are so many schools to decide what is right or wrong. One of the schools is called consequentialism. Consequentialism, meaning that right or wrong is only about the consequences. So if you take the case of Wernher von Braun, that was the name of the scientist, the Nazi scientist who was recruited by the Americans for the space program. What he did during World War II was awfully wrong, no doubt about that. Of course, well, he was forced to in a way. He could have decided not to, but the whole system was doing it. But as we know, at the Nuremberg trial, it's not considered to be a defense that everybody was doing it. But still, thanks to him, it's true, you could have the American space program. That was kind of a treasure for humanity. So you have so many cases in the history of mankind of people of whom you could really not tell if they were right or wrong, or if they were good or bad. And actually, Heidegger is one of them, but I'm not going to go back on this one. But if I've got internet, let me take you another case that I like quite a lot. Okay, this guy. So you've heard about him. Lucky Luciano was the most important mafia boss in the United States. Like, Al Capone was nobody next to him. So this guy, Lucky Luciano, here you can see, there's a very good movie about him with Gianmaria Volonté, best Italian actor ever. Okay, this is controversial here, but that's my point. Yeah, for me, the two best Italian actors are Gianmaria Volonté and the guy of La Grande Bellezza, Tony Servilio, by far. Anyway, so this guy, you could say he was a bad guy, obviously, because he was capo di tutti capi actually, he was not exactly capo di tutti capi. He decided he would not be the boss of all bosses. But he's the guy who created the 5 families in New York, so he was like an absolute top mafia guy. And he went to jail, of course. Of course he did. But you know what? When the Americans landed in Sicily, it was thanks to him, partly. Because he provided intelligence, so he provided information about all the presence of the SS divisions around Palermo and around Gela, where the Americans landed. They landed in Gela. Am I pronouncing it right? Gela? Okay. And historians are making PhD theses about how many lives he saved, which is crazy, because he was a mafia boss and obviously he was not somebody nice. But in the context of World War II, he must have saved at least 20,000 lives, probably more, by giving the right information to the American army. Of course, he wasn't doing it because he was nice. He was doing it to get out of jail. But the consequences really don't matter because, you know, if your life was saved by someone, you don't care if they saved your life because they wanted to get out of jail or not. So in philosophy there, I'm not going to tell you he was right? I'm not coming to your Liceo Scientifico to tell you that Lucky Luciano was a nice guy. But I'm telling you that good and bad are very, very hard to understand. And as you know, this symbol there of yin and yang is that you always have some good in the bad and some bad in the good. And in philosophy, this is something that would take many, many years to discuss and that I can't discuss in a single question. But that's going to be my answer to your question.
Va bene, immagino che ci siano tantissime altre domande, però non vogliamo abusare del tempo del dottor Aberkan, per cui lo ringraziamo per questa interessantissima conferenza. Un applauso grandissimo. Grazie mille.